Hey, Chris Baker here. I was recently asked by the awesome superhero video game channel Always Nerdy to be a guest to talk about my experience working on the game X-Men Origins Wolverine. I've realized I haven't really talked a whole lot about stuff I've actually done when I worked at Marvel on this channel, so this is an interview of me instead of me doing an interview, which I sometimes do. And I hope you like it. I talk about X-Men Origins Wolverine most of the time, a little bit of Marvel vs. Capcom 3, a little bit of Amazing Spider-Man. Enjoy!
Wolverine. I wasn't entirely clear on your role. I know that you worked for Marvel, but you were saying that you were mostly dealing with Activision and Fox, not necessarily Raven.
Yeah, so, what I did at Marvel, my job there was to make sure that basically all the content that went into games was on brand. So, in this case, making sure Wolverine's claws looked right, making sure the likeness of Hugh Jackman was on par. My day-to-day was with Activision, because, Activision, they were the publisher putting the game out, and they were kind of a middleman between us and Raven. So, it's not always the case that I didn't talk to developers directly. In fact, most of the times I did. But, I never really interfaced with Raven itself that much. If Raven had a question, they would send it to Activision, that would send it to me. Whatever feedback I had on the game and stuff going into it would go through Activision to them. They were kind of a filter, but they're the publisher, so they're ultimately the boss of the game itself, right? So yeah, it just kind of never really worked out that I was working with Raven directly, but I was working with their material all the time.
So I guess was the process that Raven would be working on all of their stuff, and they would send things up to Activision, and then would that get forwarded to you? Is that? And
yeah, there's a whole, with any license, any large licensor is going to have their licensing system, database. Every little piece of a game goes through it. So yeah, Raven would give, their story draft to Activision. Activision would upload it to the system so I could review it, give back notes, and, then they'd come back with their next draft, a couple weeks later, a month later, whatever. Anything like game assets, so all character models, concept art, basically every little thing that composes a game would go through the system, go through our approval process. Also go to Fox in this case too, because it was a movie game, so that made it an extra cook in the kitchen when there's already Raven, Activision, Marvel, Fox. That's why a lot of movie games take a long time to do, and often don't have a ton of time to do them because of release dates and such. Not as much a thing these days, but back then it was still very much the rage to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, I was wondering what the difference would be between, because I believe you've worked on a couple original story games, I think you Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, and I think Web of Shadows.
Yeah, Web of Shadows was the first Activision game I worked on. Okay. And then Wolverine was being developed at the same time. Edge of Time. I guess there were two movie games for Spider-Man as well. Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Lego Marvel, so those are kind of original story. Not much just story going on in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, but even little things Jack specific plug and play Spider-Man games. I helped with one of those.
Was the process much different between a more original game compared to one that's also trying to integrate movie concepts too? Is it a lot extra?
A lot of times with movie stuff, you would have to get film people involved. Not all the time, but especially for some kind of a if we're doing the Incredible Hulk game, Kevin Feige actually looked at the Incredible Hulk model and helped move that along. He had an interest in gaming himself, and was really interested in what we were doing, with the Marvel Studio stuff, which Wolverine was not. But with Wolverine, it was mainly like sending stuff to our people at Fox, and then I don't know who they'd send it to, but they'd get back in a few days with their own comments, and they were usually like pretty good about getting stuff back fast and not requiring a ton of changes. But they were also very fairly, they had a PG-13 movie, and this was definitely not a PG-13 game. So that was a concern of theirs, but they worked with us to make sure the game still happened.
Was there much of a fight to get that going, or was it pretty smooth? Do you recall?
Actually, the very first thing I ever did at Marvel when I started in 2007 was I put together a PowerPoint deck about M-rated licensed games. Like Chronicles of Riddick was in there. Yeah, Punisher is probably in there. Just to show that they were a thing, and that they, were generally, like, M-rated games for some reason were better received in that regard too. So I think at first we were trying to just sell it within Marvel, because it's not exactly a thing that everyone at Marvel necessarily would want to do, to make a game as gory and bloody as Wolverine was from the onset. Because it was originally it was not a movie game.
Right.
From what I hear, I think you've probably heard that as well, but it started out as just a Wolverine game, and then the movie came along, and it was like, we can get the most out of what we're doing if we kind of put the two together.
How far in were you added on to the project of X-Men Origins Wolverine?
The game was at its first playable stage, which is also known as vertical slice now, which is basically there's a part of the game that is pretty representative of what the final game will be, but a lot of the game still needs to be developed. So,
okay,
the vision of the game, all the levels were established. They weren't entirely built, all the characters, we knew who they would be, and that sort of thing. The script was mostly done, but there was still some tweaking and stuff like that. So yeah, it was well into development by the time I was there, but I did get to have a little bit of influence on it. There's a part where people seem to either like this or hate this, but there's an insinuation that Nightcrawler is the son of Mystique and Wraith.
You be careful, Miss Darkholme. That's my son you're carrying in there.
See you up top.
What you think of the name Kurt?
And that was my idea. I was led to believe, I don't know if it's true or not, I was led to believe that getting Bolivar Trask involved was my idea. Senator Kelly is Representative Kelly, because he's like not senator level yet, he's just representative level. That was an idea of mine. So there were like little tiny nuggets of like me I was able to throw in there. But the crux of my job is not that anyway. It was just approving things. But, it's cool when you can say, hey, maybe you guys should do this. And they're like, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. We'll do it. Yeah, the script was actually done by Mark Guggenheim. Do you know that name at all?
I do, yeah. He's done a couple X-Men comic, or like at the time, I think he had a few like Wolverine
he did.
Specific.
I think most people would probably know him now as basically the father of the Arrowverse.
Like on CW?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Like he's the one who basically brought the Arrow show. I think probably Flash too. But yeah, he was the guy who wrote the game. Originally, he worked from a script that I've recently learned it has leaked online. I never saw this particular script, but it was missing some things that wasn't in the final movie. Like it was missing Gambit. It had the Blob in a grocery store, which if you've played the game, you know you fight the blob in a grocery store instead of the boxing ring that happens in the movie. That's why. I actually didn't even know that. I just thought they put it in a grocery store.
That's what I thought too.
I just learned that recently because the script leaked online.
I saw that.
It is pretty interesting though that script did not have Gambit, and Mark Guggenheim went and Raven. They had their Gambit part of the game that was not part of the movie when they wrote it.
Oh, okay.
There's speculation, we don't know, but there's speculation that Fox saw that and was like, this is a pretty good idea. So I thought that was pretty fun. But yeah, getting Gambit in there and just expanding on the story in general, I think is one of the cool things that they were able to do. A lot more kind of Team X stuff and getting Mystique in there and
right.
The whole Sentinel fight, which I think is kind of, most people know, is the highlight. That was the first thing I saw of the game. I was like, wow, you could tell like that was like from their original game that they were going to do. They want to do that all along. They really knocked that out of the park.
Were there aspects of, like, do you recall what parts were in the original concept compared to what was in the later? Because I didn't know Gambit was part of like their
Gambit
original concept.
Definitely a big thing. Like I said, I just saw this script recently, actually right after you said you want to do this. I just did a little research. I was like, oh wow, so it's kind of out there that Gambit was not in the original script. I think that's definitely the biggest kind of takeaway there. There's a weird like ending too that was in the script that I read that was closer to the finished script, where the game ends with a blur cutscene and Kayla Silverfox just walks into a lake like this, and that's exactly how it's described in the script. In the movie she just dies like in Logan's arms or something, which makes a lot more sense. But I remember I got an email from Blur, it was from Activision, with Blur asking. Blur Studios did the cutscenes. And they were like, so let me get this straight. She just walks into the lake and it's like, and then I had the script handy and I was like, I typed it like word for word what it was. And it was like, oh, okay, that's what we'll do. There's stuff like that too. Like in the Incredible Hulk game from Sega, like it is a deleted scene in the DVD, but there's a scene where he tries to commit suicide.
Oh yeah.
At the beginning of the movie, he shoots himself in the mouth, and that's in the Sega game. It's not in the movie, but it's like how a movie was originally going to start. So sometimes it's interesting when stuff like was totally cut from a movie that makes it into the game.
Because I don't know how far into development Raven was before it got transitioned into being a movie, so I don't know if they had much story written.
Yeah, I was never clear on that myself. I am inclined to think, I don't know for sure, but I am inclined to think that opening cutscene, the kind of Days of Future Past-ish thing, it's not, you don't know for sure it's Days of Future Past at that point. And the Days of Future Past, like, stinger at the end, that was something we decided on when I was there, so that was a fairly late decision. So I don't think it was actually originally intended to be Days of Future Past there at the beginning. I think that's probably a scene from whatever their original vision was, which, I actually don't know like what that kind of story would have been, but
I think that the healing system, like where he can like just get like blown to shreds and then like heal it up on screen, I have to imagine that'll make it into the Insomniac game too, because that's really innovative, and it really was really cool to see that, really immersive. Yeah,
that was, I think, what, it was your health bar, basically, right? Like, it was a great way to depict that. And the gameplay was let's face it, basically just God of War, right? What God of War was back then. But, it did have its own kind of unique flair, like the lunge and, and that cool, just kind of healing stuff, and having Hugh Jackman himself, I think, added a lot to it. And yeah, it was just a blast to play. They actually did have a bit of a blessing in disguise in this game in the form of the 2007 writer's strike, which the game and movie would have come out a year earlier,
right?
Had that writer's strike not happened. So that was a huge game dev development that, blessing that, a lot of games just don't. Almost every game that was doing that did not have that luxury. So, the writer's strike was very much something that I think helped the game.
Were there things like left on the cutting room floor that you can maybe recall that didn't make it into the game?
No, I don't think. There's stuff like that I thought would have been cool that I suggested they do, that they were like, yeah, we can't do that for resource time, stuff like that.
Do you remember what those were?
I would like to have seen the Gambit fight with his claws drawn in. You mean
like a fist fight instead of a claw fight?
Because he at that point, he doesn't. Maybe I'm misremembering, but it's a misunderstanding. Gambit's not someone he wants to kill necessarily. He just wants to, put him in his place. So, right. It would have made it a little less video gamey, which, I'm usually a fan of trying to make things real if you can't,
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, it is a video game. And, absolutely nobody complained about that. So it's totally fine. There was another thing where I thought it'd been a fun idea. There's a part where Wolverine cuts the arm off or the hand of somebody so he can get through a door.
Yeah.
And, I thought it would have been cool if you just had the hand in your back pocket that whole time, right?
That actually would have been pretty cool.
But that involves creating a hand model.
Yeah,
it's work that you don't really need to do. It's just a cool little thing.
I still think it's a good idea. Do you remember if there was anything you had to not approve, something that they had sent up and you were like, I don't know. I think
there's always tweaks to things. Yeah, I'm sure there was stuff in the script. I know the PSP script I thought was pretty bad and basically had to rewrite it.
Really? I'll totally rewrite it?
A lot of things in it.
Was it because it wasn't matching the movie very well, or it was just bad?
This is 14 years ago now,
yeah.
So it's hard to,
yeah, it's a big
hard to remember specifics. I remember it was like Wolverine. The way it was set up was Wolverine is narrating. It was a tough time, when we were out on this mission and blah blah blah. And it's this is the narration of a person remembering things, and the whole end of this movie is him forgetting everything that happened. So the whole idea of the way these levels are set up is just not compatible with the story being told. So that's what that was. I think they changed it and fixed it. They better have. So there was the Xbox 360 PS3 game. I think it was on PC as well. I can't remember.
I think so.
And yeah, those were the Uncaged edition, which was the real game, the one that we're talking about. Then there was one on Wii and PS2 that was kind of the same thing. I think it had the same script, but it had a completely different developer. And, some levels were just look completely different. And, it wasn't as, it was a T game. It wasn't as bloody and all that. Because Wii and PS2, which was still kind of viable at that time, PS2, but not really. And there was a DS game that had a really unique art style. It was really fun to play. The art style was I don't know if I really like this, but I like that you're giving it a unique style. So just go ahead and run with it. So that was actually that's a really fun, just kind of combo-based beat-em-up kind of game that Kryptonite was really good at. They did some really good Spider-Man ones too, and a really good Captain America one. If you ever want some good DS games. Was there another? Oh, there was like a cell phone version that Activision had. I think it was EA actually did that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I mean like Java, like flip phone, not. We weren't quite at iPhone yet. I think the iPhone was out, but it wasn't something that they were making the games for just quite yet. So that was awful. That one,
Did you have to play through it to try it out?
I played
like,
a little bit, but they sent me like gameplay videos, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna make sure everything looks right. But that's what all those games were. Anything on mobile, any flip phone game that was Java based was just, I don't know who actually played that. Yeah, so there were several versions of that game, and every one is its own specific game. So it's like, you got to treat it like it's its own product and everything. So it's not just like the 360 PS3 version was it. There's other stuff too that we had to care just as much about.
So was there much like talk between like Raven and all these different developers, or was it all pretty much just do your own thing?
I doubt it. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure they shared some assets. Like I know they shared the same Blur cutscenes, right?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
By the way, the person who directed the Blur cutscenes, Tim Miller, the director of Deadpool.
Really?
Yeah. So
that's cool.
So in a way, this was his first experience with Deadpool.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
that is cool though. I didn't know he was part of Blur. That's cool.
Oh yeah, he headed that studio. Actually, did you ever see the leak of the Deadpool footage that leaked that got the internet like really? Whoa, we need to see this movie. That's Blur. That's all a Blur video that he.
Oh wow.
produced.
Okay.
Yeah. Blur was like the primo CG house back then. They did all the Ultimate Alliance 1 cutscenes that were really awesome. Yep. They did those. All those Star Wars The Old Republic trailers that are really great. I think they still do those here and there.
You had access to the original script too, or
I had access to the script that was current with when I was there.
Okay. Do you know if there were a lot of like revisions? Like, were you getting like new scripts often and having to like go and like
no,
change
I wasn't
things
getting
up?
New scripts often. They did send us at one point dailies, which if you don't know what dailies are, it's the daily shots. It's like the completely raw footage that they shoot of the characters acting, which is quite different than what you actually see on the big screen. It's really remarkable what post-production does. But yeah, like I remember, I don't remember if it was Guggenheim or someone else who was a writer, but they were watching those dailies that we had. They spent the whole day watching them, and they were like, oh yeah, we picked up this one thing. Creed calls him Jimmy. That's not in the script, so we're going to put that in ours. He calls him Jimmy. Because James Howlett. And so that's a little thing that made it in there. So yeah, we did have access to stuff, stuff that the production shots, behind the scenes production shots, we would get stuff like that. So, we had the access to the materials to make things as authentic as we could. Some characters they looked like their characters, the people playing them. Some did not. And that was likeness rights. Likeness rights are a whole other animal. You don't just pay for rights to the movie. You got to pay the actors to make, if it's not already part of the deal. I think EA was super smart with their Lord of the Rings games, and like they made that part of their deal. Like everyone is part of this, but like we Activision got Hugh Jackman and
Liev Schreiber.
Yeah,
is that? Am I pronouncing it right? I don't know.
Liev Schreiber, I think, is his name.
I probably got it mixed up.
But like Agent X, wait, is that the
Nord?
Yeah.
Agent Zero,
the guy,
I think is.
Zero, yeah, Agent Zero.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was wrong. Maverick, I think he also is later in the comics. Yeah, like that's just an Asian looking dude. It's not whoever was playing him. It's not Ryan Reynolds playing as Wade Wilson. It's someone that kind of sort of looks like Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just a production issue. There's parts where it makes sense to fork over, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars for likeness rights. And then there's parts where, if they're just going to be in a cutscene for a little bit, probably not, it's not going to sell enough units to make up for that cost. So you just get something that's in the ballpark. I think it was still fine, though. No one really complained that Agent Zero didn't look like whatever actor played him.
I forgot he was in the movie, honestly. So, yeah, I think they picked and choose who... Because, Wade Wilson, too, only has, like, a couple lines in the whole movie, or in the whole game. So
he's the highlight of the movie before he becomes Deadpool. He's like,
he's like, yeah, he really
legitimately
is
funny, and yeah.
And then they went and did, and then they sewed his mouth shut, of course.
I got to do a shot at that in Marvel vs. Capcom 3. If you play as Deadpool and you beat Wolverine, he might say,
"You see that? That's how you beat Wolverine, people. And you don't even need optic glass!"
Because he has really optic glass in this movie, and that was a contribution from me to Marvel vs. Capcom 3. If you somehow played it and enjoyed that line, you're welcome.
That's hilarious. I'm gonna have to try. I need to try that out. I didn't know that was in there.
There's a lot of character-specific lines. Deadpool. I had a lot of fun with putting Deadpool ones in there. Like, I'm sure you know the X-Men arcade game, the Konami arcade game where Magneto's like, X-Men, welcome to die, right?
Yeah.
It was my idea to have Deadpool greet Magneto with
Magneto, welcome to die!
And when in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, you remember the Turn Off the Dark Spider-Man musical?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
There was all these problems with people getting hurt. That was like headlines a lot. So when Deadpool confronts Spidey, he's like,
"Gonna rough you up like a Broadway musical." Ah, that was too easy. Maybe it would have helped if you turned off the dark.
That's really good.
I was shocked our lawyer let that pass. I was like, yeah, put that in there. I really want to put that in there. He's like, yeah, that's actually pretty good. Do it.
Okay. Do you get a lot of input in, I guess since Origins Wolverine was maybe like an earlier game that you were working on, so do you have like a lot more input, or had more input beyond that?
For games after that?
Yeah. I guess both, like, because I guess you didn't have a whole lot for Origins, but it sounds like maybe like Marvel vs. Capcom you did.
Yeah, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Marvel Pinball were they were like the most welcoming. Like, if you got stuff that you think would be good, if we think it's good, we'll put it in there, So I was like, this isn't actually my job, but I really want to do it, so I did it. Like, yeah, and Activision stuff, I would often suggest things, and sometimes they took it, sometimes they didn't. I think actually the Amazing Spider-Man game has a lot of me in it. Like, every bio in that I wrote, and there's a scene with Black Cat that the original script I thought was kind of dry. Is like there was no flirtation at all, and how do you have Black Cat and not have Spider-Man to have her flirt with Spider-Man?
Yeah.
So, I added some flirtation, and I added some, like, stuff that speaks to the overall plot that wasn't really there. It was, like, totally a side mission that didn't pertain to anything. And actually, Greg Miller, like, pointed that out as, like, being the highlight of the game for him. And I was like,
wow.
Okay. That's, like, the part I really wrote, so...
That's crazy.
Thanks.
And that's not even, like, that's not part of your job at all, like writing.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
that's crazy.
The thing that it was my job to do was to say, this is not as good as it could be because, this core element of Spider-Man and Black Cat isn't there. There has to be flirtation between them. And it would be better if this actually spoke to the overall plot in some way and it wasn't just a side mission. That's fine. You can do that. But I took it the next step and I was like, if you guys want to take this as it is, I think it works for me. If it's what you want in your game, you can have it.
So you just wrote it like ahead of time,
yeah,
and just sent it and was like,
I stayed till like 2 a.m. to write it.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, I worked some, I couldn't put up with those hours that it was me wanting to work that too. It wasn't like I was being forced to. It was like, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 has a ton of alternate costumes for all the Marvel. It's not really, it's more like alternate colors that are based on costumes.
Okay.
And I did all the research for the Marvel stuff. It was actually my idea to make everything indicative of something. They were just going to do like they had always done before, which was like, normal Spider-Man, pink Spider-Man. Like
a recolor?
Teal Spider-Man, and I was like, no, we people, we're at a part in superhero video games where people love alternate costumes. It's like a core thing now. So, let's do everything we can to make things actually reflect something that is from the comics. So we did that, and, I did like blog entries and stuff, telling people what they were so they knew, and people really responded well to that. And I was really proud to have associated with that. But that was a lot of staying at work till midnight, 1 a.m.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. Actually, can you excuse me for a second? My daughter.
Yeah.
Just woke
Go
up.
for it.
We might have a visitor here in a second. I would love to have seen another game like this, but that's just not the way things panned out. But I do have full faith that Insomniac's game is going to probably top this game in many ways, and that's possibly my most anticipated game now. Insomniac's Wolverine, because I'm such a huge fan of the character.
Absolutely, and seeing what Raven was able to do with this one, and knowing what Insomniac did with Spider-Man, that should be I think in a lot of ways I think this game could have like really been like a big game, potentially on like Asylum level, like Arkham Asylum levels, which may be like kind of like big words, but I think if it hadn't been a movie tie-in, I think had they been able to really like go through, because I was reading they were saying that the Egypt or the Africa level was originally going to be the Savage Land, and I was like, oh my gosh,
really?
It could have been.
I didn't know that.
It was like on an old blog where they were like writing about that, and I was like, oh man, like dinosaurs could have been roaming around here, like that could have been really
interesting,
really cool. So it's like I would have loved to have seen that. It feels like to me, I'm just speculating, I don't know anything about what's going on, but just like the Days of Future Past stuff, it feels like the idea was maybe to like push it in okay, we did the movie game, now let's set up our own original vision again. I don't know if there were talks that you were part of or why that was decided. I do think that
was the idea, was like, we might just do our own like set in the movie universe kind of thing, sequel, like a pseudo sequel kind of thing. Like the Amazing Spider-Man game is kind of that, right? It takes place after the events of the Amazing Spider-Man. Even the THQ Punisher game, a lot of people don't realize, is kind of that. It's very comic booky, but the jigsaw in the game at the very end is the son of John Travolta, who like he tells him to hold on to this bomb that weighs 8 pounds or something, right? And, like you see the explosion 2 minutes later. Like that's him. It's not like Billy Russo like in comics. So there are examples of kind of like splinter movie game universes that I think this could have been an example of, and been pretty interesting. But
Do you know if the game did pretty good sales-wise, or?
I think it did okay.
Okay.
Yeah, the marketing for it was a little hampered by the fact that it was an M-rated game for a PG-13 movie. So it didn't get quite the push it probably would have gotten if it weren't a movie game. It would have gotten a lot more of a push marketing-wise. But, there's only so much they could do.
Well, I think that's all I've got for you, Chris. I am curious, what are you doing now? Because are you still working with Marvel, or are you doing other
no,
stuff?
I work for Zen Studios, which is a developer in Hungary, which, I mentioned earlier that Zen Pinball, or Marvel Pinball, was something that was very receptive to my feedback. That was Zen Studios.
Okay.
So I've had a nice working relationship with them ever since that time. And yeah, I've been with Zen Studios for about 4 years now, and I am writing RPGs most of the time now these days. The next one's called Circus Electrique. It comes out later this year. And other games I've done, Operencia, The Stolen Sun is probably my favorite game I've worked on so far. And that is, it harkens back to old school games like Wizardry and the Bard's Tale, like first person dungeon crawler games.
Are you writing the story on those?
Yeah, I did. It came out a couple years ago. It's kind of had its day at this point, I guess, but I'm still pretty proud of it. So Operencia, The Stolen Sun, for people who like that sort of thing. Oh, sorry, sweetie. Yeah, and other than that, I'm just looking after this little girl.
Poor thing, it's late.
Yeah, it is.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate you hanging out and talking.
Sure thing. It was fun.
Hey, thanks for watching. She's a lot more awake now than she was in that video. But wow, okay, that's a view. I guess like and subscribe if you want to do that kind of thing. I don't care. I'll see you next time. I actually do have a lot of stuff planned for the next, I don't know, 6 months or so. It's just a matter if I have time to do it. Interesting perspective here. Anyway, bye.